Hello everyone and welcome back to Double Play Baseball. In this video, we've got an exciting one. We're going over award predictions, Rookie of the Year, Cy Young, MVP, and then some other fun awards like Comeback Player of the Year, Breakout Player. It's all going to be talked about in this video. Opening day is tomorrow if you're watching this when it comes out on Wednesday, and we could not be more excited. We did our season predictions, including records, playoffs, World Series, so go check that out as well. But right here, we've got awards, and Ryan, let's start small and build up. So we'll go with the Rookie of the Year and build our way up to MVP. Who do you have as your Rookie of the Year pick in the American League, as well as a dark horse? We're going to give dark horses for some of these awards as well.
In the American League, it's a guy I've been high on kind of all off season. If you've kind of followed along, we did our team previews as well as ranking position-wise. And I've got Gunnar Henderson winning that award. I think he's just going to be a star in general in baseball. I think he's going to be kind of this year's Julio Rodriguez, if you will, kind of a breakout star who's can be an all-star and potentially even an MVP candidate in just a couple years. So I've got him winning the Rookie of the Year. The news of Volpe making the opening day roster kind of made it a little tough for me. I kind of gave it a little thought there, but I ended up going Gunnar Henderson to win the award. I stuck with my original pick, and I could see Volpe doing it. I would love to see him do it, but the question for me was, will he start enough games? It was originally, will he play enough games? And now, will he start enough games, which we know Gunnar Henderson has the third base job locked down for the Orioles. So I've got him winning that award in the American League.
Who's your dark horse?
My dark horse, and I'm going Hunter Brown at plus 1,800. I provided the odds for, like betting odds for the dark horses, and kind of went, if they weren't in the top three of odds, then I kind of considered him a dark horse, maybe extended a little based on the award. But I think Hunter Brown can do it as long as he gets enough starts. I think he's going to be pretty good this year, and he's going to be my dark horse pick.
Well, this is kind of lame. So I've got Gunnar Henderson winning the award as well. I agree with everything you said. I think he's going to be a stud. He's just, I think, the safest pick. And there aren't many guys that come up and you know they're going to be superstars, but Gunnar Henderson is one of those names. And he's got such a clear path to playing time for an Orioles team that he could easily be the best player on the Orioles this year, and I would not be surprised. So I've got him winning, and I've got Hunter Brown as my dark horse as well. I was looking down the board on the odds list, and he's a name that stuck out as like, this dude is not in the top three in odds. He was so good last year when he came up, and a top prospect. And I mean, you got to believe in the Astros with the way that they develop their young talent. And some of these teams where prospects have to wait a while to come up, they're so polished by the time that they're ready and they get the call. And Hunter Brown's one of those dudes. So I got the same thing, Gunnar Henderson and Hunter Brown. Who do you have in the National League? Please don't be the same as my picks.
I think this one is going to be the same. But we're going to differ. You made fun of me for saying that. Differ in these picks. I went with Jordan Walker in the National League. I kind of hopped off the Corbin Carroll train a little bit. Maybe they'll be a little bit different. And in the past 3 days, I've kind of been looking at other people's pick, and it seems like everyone's on Jordan Walker now. So I started it to be different, and now it's not very different. But as my dark horse, I really wanted to go Dodgers pitcher here, kind of take a page out of your book with the A. Marlin pick for the NL Cy Young, which you got right last year for your dark horse. But I'm going Dodgers player. I kind of looking at these odds, my two favorite are probably my two favorite that I would want to pick are probably the bottom two of the four that could win it. It's Miguel Vargas, Bobby Miller, James Outman, and Gavin Stone. I kind of like Gavin Stone and James Outman better than the other two. And I really want to pick Gavin Stone, but his odds are plus 15,000. But I just don't think he gets enough innings. And I can almost see him not even pitching enough to pitch out of his rookie eligibility. And I can almost see myself picking him outright to win the award next year. But what he's done in spring has been really good. His stuff has looked insane. And Outman's been put on a show when he got called up last year and then in spring training as well. So I like those two names as my dark horse.
Oh, what the hell? I went with Jordan Walker as my pick, but you knew that already. You knew I was going Jordan Walker as my Rookie of the Year pick because I'm on that same train. I think Corbin Carroll is a guy that I could see winning it, but as a guy who relies a lot on his speed, I don't know why. I just don't think that by the end of the year, everyone's going to be as in love with him as they are now. And Walker's got that potential where he could be one of the best power hitters out of all rookies. He can still hit for average. I think he's got a clear path to playing time as well. We know now that he's going to start the season in the major leagues. Won't play third base because Nolan Arenado is going to be there, but could play outfield, could be DHing. I really like Jordan Walker, so I went with him, and I went with James Outman as my dark horse. We saw what he could do last year at the major league level. I saw it firsthand against the Giants, and he was a stud. And we went to spring training and got to see the Dodgers camp, and we're standing right behind James Outman when he hit home runs off Evan Phillips and Alex Vesia in live ABs in 2 straight at bats. That's the kind of talent that eventually got rewarded. So I was thinking I could maybe actually pick James Outman outright, but I do believe in Jordan Walker a little bit more. Honestly, I think Outman should be considered as probably a top 3 potential guy in the National League. But I mean, kind of boring that we had all the same picks. But I think that these are guys that are going to be really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Outman's been so fun to watch throughout the spring. In his first at-bat ever at Dodger Stadium yesterday, he was in a spring training game, but he hit a home run in their game against the Angels. So, I mean, he's staying hot throughout the entire spring. If he can carry it into the season, that'd be great.
And the Dodgers produce Rookie of the Year every year, so it seems.
And this isn't even to mention Miguel Vargas, who actually is third in odds-wise to win the awards behind Jordan Walker and Corbin Carroll. So another Dodger that could win it, Bobby Miller. If one of him or Stone gets enough innings, I think either of them can do it as well. So this could be another year for a Dodger. You're right. I mean, Jock Peterson won it. Corey Seager won it. Bellinger won it. Seems like every time they have a rookie who's kind of getting some hype around him, they're going to be in the conversation or win that award. So they've got a couple that can do it this year.
Yeah, let's move on to Cy Young. Why don't you start us off again in the National League?
In the National League, I really didn't know. We were talking a little bit, texting. I don't really like someone who's like, all right, yeah, I'm picking that guy. Whereas I had some in some other awards. This in NL MVP, I was kind of getting that feeling. I ended up going with Aaron Nola to win the award. He was actually originally as my dark horse, and then I found a different dark horse that I liked. And Aaron Nola wasn't that far down the dark horse odds-wise. I think he was he was definitely top 10 odds-wise to win it. So Aaron Nola, I've got winning the award. I had Corbin Burns for a little bit, but I just don't know. I've got Aaron Nola winning that, and my dark horse. This one's where we got a little bias for me. I didn't have it in Rookie of the Year. My dark horse is Dustin May at plus 6,500 to win this award. I think he's gonna show if he puts together a full season that he can be an ace on a lot of teams, and I think if he's able to put together a full season, he's kind of unhittable when his stuff is working.
Yeah, I really respect the Dustin May pick. I have him in fantasy baseball, and I don't like to draft many Dodgers, but he was a guy that I saw as kind of underdrafted. I think that's a lot of what we're looking for in a dark horse, and that's a good pick. I was thinking Corbin Burns as well for the longest time, and the only reason I didn't go Corbin Burns is the fact I do think he's going to be traded. If he's traded to an American League team, there's no way he's winning the NL Cy Young, and that's what we saw with, Luis Castillo probably wouldn't have won last year, but he got no votes because he was traded from a National League team to an American League team, and I think it's just hard for a player that's traded in general to come out with a big award. So I ended up going with his Brewers teammate right now. I'm going with Brandon Woodruff, who was dominant down the stretch. I know he struggled a little bit early because some injuries he was dealing with, but once you got the real Brandon Woodruff back, he was phenomenal. So I think a couple years ago, he was the guy in Milwaukee, and he hasn't gotten any worse since then. It's just that Burns has been really good. He was so good last year down the stretch, one of the best starting pitchers in baseball over the last 2 months. And if you do have Corbin Burns traded, now you've got Brandon Woodruff that is going to start more games. He's going to be the ace for the Brewers down the stretch, and I think those two guys will be in contention the whole way. But I ended up going with Brandon Woodruff. I like being different with my Cy Young picks. Pitching is a thing I'm passionate about, and I like being different. So I ended up going with Woodruff. And my dark horse, going with a lefty, and I'm going with Blake Snell, who's in with the Padres. And this is a guy who I didn't see myself picking at all. I know I think it's fun to kind of crap on Blake Snell sometimes, but he was sneakily really, really good last year. And the one season that we've seen him throw bulk innings, he won the Cy Young. So many strikeouts last year that if they can lengthen him out a little bit more this year, he will easily be right at the top of that conversation. So I'm going Blake Snell. It's I guess it is a true dark horse pick, but I think that if he throws some more innings this year, he can and maybe even will win the National League Cy Young.
For the American League Cy Young, there was 2 awards on here that I wanted to kind of predict these guys betting on health. And I was like, I can't pick both. I was going to pick one or the other. And I ended up going with the American League Cy Young. I think DeGrom has a bounce back, fully healthy year with this new club, the Rangers. And it's kind of like Shohei in the American League. If they're both healthy, or for the MVP, that is, if they're healthy and there's not a generational season that in front of them, they're going to win the award. And I think that's where DeGrom's at right now. And I went 2 dark horses on this one, cheated a little bit. They have the same odds, 2 guys that I could see winning this award, both at plus 1,600. I've got Luis Castillo, who you mentioned, and then also Shane Bieber to win it for his second time. I like both of those names. Kind of a little bit down the betting odds board to win the award. If some things go there right at the top, I actually had DeGrom or Manoah. Manoah was going to be my other pick if I wasn't betting on DeGrom's health, so I could see him winning it as well, but I'm going with DeGrom as my main pick.
I almost actually gave the overall award to Luis Castillo. That was very close to thinking that Castillo was going to win the National League or the American League Cy Young. And if you watch the Yankees video, you would have seen that I had a bold prediction for Carlos Rodon to win Cy Young, and I was going to stick with that until the news that has come out that I was going to stick with it even with him missing a couple starts. But if he's out till May, I'm just not sure I can predict him to win the award. I've said it before that I would have picked him if he was going to be healthy for the season, at least if it looked like he was going to be healthy to start the year. I was going to go Rodon, so I had to switch things up. And I like to be different, and I don't like to have the same trendy pick that a lot of people do, but I am going to go that way with the American League Cy Young, and I'm going to say that I think Christian Javier wins it. And I was originally like thinking Javier would be good, but I didn't want to pick him because I know him and Zach Gallen are kind of the 2 trendy picks right now, but I went with Javier for a couple of reasons. When I was looking at pitchers, I was really looking at guys that didn't have super high ground ball rates in the past couple of years. That's something that has been trending on the up because it's been easier to get outs on ground balls than fly balls and the home runs that have been happening. But with the shift restrictions, I think that guys that get a lot of ground balls are really going to have a steep learning curve because outs that have been outs in the past couple of years will be hits again. And I think that affects guys like Logan Webb, even Manoah, or guys like Shane McClanahan, who I wanted to pick to win this award because McClanahan has the highest ground ball rate in all of baseball among qualified starting pitchers. You want to know who has the lowest? And is still a very good pitcher. It's Christian Javier, the lowest ground ball rate in the MLB among qualified starters last year, but still a top 2% in expected batting average. Not hit hard at all. Gets a lot of strikeouts. I think he'll be a frontline starter, if not the ace for the Astros, who I have being the best team in all of the American League. So Christian Javier, a pick that I had to talk myself into because I wanted to be a little bit different, but Christian Javier I think is going to win the American League Cy Young. And if I had to give my dark horse, I went with Lance Lynn, another guy a lot like Brandon Woodruff, who had a very, very, very good second half last year. I think a 0.6 ERA across his last certain starts. It's like a certain stretch of starts. And after coming back from injuries, which he was pitching through because he wanted the White Sox to do well, he was so good down the stretch. So I'm going with Lance Lynn. Dylan Cease was one of my guys last year, and that hit. So I'm going to go with Lance Lynn this year.
Another White Sox there. Should we move on to the MVP now? Do you want to start off with the American League? Because I think the National League one is probably a little bit more exciting. So let's start off with the American League.
I had like 20 guys I wanted to pick for the American League MVP. And yet still I can't make a fun pick because it's going to be Shohei Ohtani. Like, come on now. I know that Aaron Judge won it last year, but that was the best season that we've seen since Barry Bonds and even better than some of the seasons we've seen from Barry Bonds. Like, Aaron Judge was absolutely ridiculous last year, but come on, everyone watched the World Baseball Classic. Shohei Ohtani will probably win the MVP just about every season he plays in the major leagues. So I'm kind of Mr. No Fun here. I'm going with Shohei Ohtani. I will say honorable mentions to Aaron Judge, obviously. Yordan Alvarez, Mike Trout, Kyle Tucker, all guys that I wanted to throw in there as well. Yordan was the one that I really wanted to go. If I was going to go off the board, I was going to go Yordan Alvarez. I mean, I know he finished in the top 3 last year, but when you've got Shohei, Mike Trout, and Aaron Judge, like, they're probably going to be the 3 betting favorites just about every year. My dark horse, I've already mentioned 2 Astros. I'm going a third different one. I'm going Alex Bregman, who casually, a 5.5 WAR last year, 136 WRC plus, and he's one of those guys that'll have to step up in this Astros roster that now does not have Jose Altuve. And we saw him the last time we saw him fully healthy he was contending for an MVP. And I think that he could do so again with some more power this year now that he's fully healthy. I think Alex Bregman, if he picks up where he left off the last time with full health and builds on last season, which was already great, I think he could potentially win the MVP.
I went the same way. The player I was betting, DeGrom and Trout were the two that I was like betting on health. I could see them win this World. I ended up going DeGrom. I actually had Trout for the longest time, but like I said, what we saw in the World Baseball Classic, I wanted to be different than pick Shohei, but it just, you really can't. And barring, I said going into last year that I didn't pick Shohei because he would have to kind of be great in a different way, because the year he won, he was great hitting and a good pitcher, and last year it flipped a little bit, although he's still great in both. And I thought maybe the voters for the MVP would be like, okay, yeah, I mean, he's insane, but like we can't give him every year. But we saw it being so close last year, the voting wise, with Judge having a generational season, and I think that tells you, like what you said, if there's not a season like Aaron Judge had, Shohei's going to win, and that's kind of what it came down to. I think Shohei's going to win that. And then my dark horse, like there's so many guys. I went outside of those like 7 kind of.
I already know who
main ones.
Okay,
you already know who I went with. I went outside like the 7 main ones because I don't know if I view them as dark horse. You kind of say anyone outside of the 3 of Shohei, Judge, and Trout are dark horses.
I mean, I don't think Kyle Tucker's a dark horse guy. I think he's like he's one of those guys that I feel like is in that top 7, or like a Julio Rodriguez.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. That's something you can consider him dark horses just because it's truly a 3-horse race. But so I went outside of those for my dark horse, although I could pick any of those guys. I almost went Julio Rodriguez as my dark horse. Even like I said, I feel like he's in that grouping of players now who is kind of not really a dark horse. So I ended up going Corey Seager, who is plus 4,500. I feel like he's the best player outside of the main grouping of players that are like the best players in the American League. And he's been kind of a trendy pick as a dark horse as well. He had like 20-something hits taken away from the shift. He was the number 1 player impacted by the shift. I did the math once, and his batting average, which was below 250 last year, would have been around 280 had you added in those hits that were taken away from the shift. And then plus he had a career year, power numbers wide. He had the most home runs in his career. So he's up near 300 with 40 bombs. That's a great season, or 30 to 40 bombs. So I think Corey Seager kind of, if he's really able to benefit as much as they're saying from the taking away of the shift, I could see him kind of being in that conversation. I don't know if he'd win it, but it's fun for me to talk about because he's my favorite player. And he just kind of went as my dark horse just because why not?
It's really hard for a shortstop to win MVP. That's just what I'll point out. The last one I believe was Jimmy Rollins a very long time ago. It's just kind of hard in this modern day and age of baseball for a shortstop to win MVP, and there will be more stress on shortstops now, considering they'll have to play regular defense for the first time in the last couple of years with the shift being restricted. So I do think there's a give and take with Corey Seager. I have no doubt that I think he could be the best shortstop in baseball this year, but it's really hard for a shortstop to win MVP in this day and age. Moving over to the National League, I've hinted with you that about this one, and we've talked saying this is like pick any of those 7 guys from the American League and put them in the National League, and I pick them. But the National League a little bit harder. There are definitely guys I thought about, including 2 Padres who I wanted to give the award to, like Juan Soto, Fernando Tatis Jr. I've mentioned in the past, I think Tatis will be the best player in the National League, but with the games that he has to miss and the voter, I wouldn't call it voter fatigue, but I think the voters won't want to give him the award after all that's happened with him over the last couple of years. I'm not going with Tatis. So I'm going to go with Mookie Betts, actually. And I think that's a player that people have almost forgotten about a little bit, just because, Freddie Freeman was out of the Dodgers and Mookie hasn't had that generational type season, but very, very good last year. He was on our all MLB team as one of the outfielders. And I think that this is the year where, they need it. They need a 2018 Mookie Betts. They need him to rise up to answer the call because the Dodgers have lost a lot of guys. Right now it's him, it's Freddie, and then it's the rest of the lineup. And I think you're going to see Mookie take on an extra leadership role. I think you're going to see him hit the ball even better than he has when he was even very, very good last year. And I think it's very easy to pen a narrative around the season that Mookie Betts is going to have. And sometimes that's what you need to win one of these major awards. So I think Mookie steps up and wins his first MVP as a Dodger. And then my dark horse, there were 2 outfielders that won the Rookie of the Year last year. A lot of people really like Julio Rodriguez this year. I think Michael Harris is a very, very solid dark horse to win MVP in the National League. When you talk about the level that he hits at, the level he defends at, where I think he can be a platinum glover out in center field, and the steals are another thing that we have to factor in this year with the bigger bases. If he's hitting as one of the best outfielders as a hitter, he's playing the best outfield defense in the league, and he's stealing some of the most bases in baseball, I think he could easily be a dark horse to win the MVP, especially on a Braves team that's going to be very good.
So one thing that I remember you saying last year, and I think it's funny that you just said something new kind of along the same lines. Last year when we were doing this video, you told me basically the same thing you were saying about Corey Seager with shortstops. You're like, you never see first baseman win in a full 162 season. Like you saw Jose Abreu and Freddie won it in 2020, but a full season, you never see first baseman wins it. And then Paul Goldschmidt goes out and wins the award. So I think we're going to see a little bit, hopefully for my pick's sake, that we see your jinx come through again. Because after the World Baseball Classic, another kind of maybe recency bias, I've got Trey Turner winning it, and I wasn't really in love with any other candidate. I was going back and forth between Juan Soto and Mookie Betts, and I maybe get the vibe that this might be Juan Soto's year to do it. We've kind of talked about it for a couple of years now. I kind of get that vibe that maybe he does win it this year, but I didn't want to pick the Padres. Screw that. No. And so I ended up going Trey Turner, and hopefully your curse of saying this position can't win it benefits me, and maybe a shortstop can win it again this year with Trey Turner. The way he's been doing that, he just earned his contract. He's looking like he's worth much more than that contract, at least right now in the World Baseball Classic, and he was into spring training. So that's who my pick is. Before I get into my dark horse, what do you want to say?
He was my other honorable mention. My 3 HMs were Soto, Tatis, and Trey Turner, just because the way I think he'll fit in that Phillies offense.
Yeah, I mean, odds-wise, he was pretty much a dark horse going into that World Baseball Classic. He was way down there, and then I checked again today, and now he's at fourth odds behind Juan Soto, Tatis, and Mookie. So he jumped Machado, who was above him, and a couple other guys. And then my dark horse is another guy who's been tearing up spring training, Matt Olson at plus 2,500. He's been doing really well this spring, and I think he's going to be my dark horse. Maybe 2 recency bias picks, but I haven't really been in love with anyone in the National League. So those 2 guys are going. My main pick is Trey Turner and Matt Olson as the dark horse.
Yeah, Matt Olson's a guy he was my big bounce back pick when we were talking through our season previews, and he was a guy I wanted to give the award to in general. And so I ended up going with his Braves teammate because I think Harris is more of a dark horse because a lot of people are getting on the Matt Olson train now, but I think he's going to bounce back in a major way. I wouldn't be surprised if he has the best season of all first basemen in baseball. Like, he's so good, and he's, I think, showing it again, and he'll benefit in a lot of ways. He's one of those guys that will benefit from the shift being restricted. The last 2 are just, I think, more fun picks. We're going comeback player of the year and breakout player of the year. We're not doing dark horses for these, just giving a pick. I'll do both my comeback players in the NL. If you're here to the way I'm talking about Fernando Tatis, it's kind of hard to give it to anyone else in the National League. So I'm going with Tatis, coming back from a variety of different things is what I'll say. And then in the American League, I'm more just come back from injury kind. That's Chris Sale, who I think is, if he's healthy, going to pitch well enough to earn himself the American League Comeback Player of the Year. Last year, it was Justin Verlander, and there weren't many other picks. And in the American League, there weren't as many other guys I wanted to go with. So I'm going with Chris Sale.
I'm right there with you on the Tatis. I feel like it's impossible to really pick anyone else the way he's coming back from a variety of things. I like how you worded that. With injury, suspension, he's still one of the better players in baseball, up there at the top, and he's going to prove that once he comes back in April from that rest of that suspension. In the American League, I went and gave it to Yasmani Grandal, who pretty much everyone thought was the best catcher in baseball going into last season. Then he kind of had an abysmal 2022. I think he's a good comeback player, not necessarily from injury, but kind of bouncing back to the production he's put up. We kind of expected before last season him to have. So Yasmani Grandal wins the comeback player of the year for me in the American League.
I think breakout player of the year, most people, if you watched all of our 30 team previews and bold predictions, all that kind of stuff, you might be able to predict some of the guys that we would have in consideration for breakout player. Oh, enough for you. Wow. I'll give mine though. American League, I've got Vinny Pasquantino of the Kansas City Royals, who I've been on since last year. Maybe he broke out last year, but he was still a rookie, and I think that he can break out this year and will in a big way. I think he'll be one of the best first basemen in baseball. He's going to be so good. And then National League, I was picking between a couple of guys. I ended up going with Hunter Green, the right-hander for the Cincinnati Reds, who we just talked about last week when we were doing the NL Central previews. I think that, one of him and Nick Lodolo was going to be my pick, and I ended up going with Hunter Green.
So I'll start off with this one in the American League. I've got another White Sox here. I've got Andrew Vaughn, and this is a guy we've kind of talked about a little bit. He had the potential going in. He had to play outfield when he's really first baseman. He's now going to take over first baseman, so maybe he benefits from that consistency and kind of familiarity, and he's able to break out with his bat that he wasn't able to do much last year. And then the National League kind of won. I don't know. It started to become a little bit of a popular pick for breakout, but we haven't really talked about him pretty much at all. But I went Brian De La Cruz for the Miami Marlins. I think in the month of September, the last month of the year, there were only 2 players in baseball that had a better average or WRC plus than him. One of them was Aaron Judge. I can't remember who the second one was, but he had like a 150 or something like that WRC plus in the last month of the year and was good in October, or not October, August, the one that came before September. So he was great down the stretch, kind of an underrated player who's starting to get a little hype surrounded him. So I think he can break out for the Marlins this year.
Andrew Vaughn, I actually scratched a couple days ago because I remembered, wait, I can put Vinny Pasquantino on this list. But Vaughn was going to be my pick in the American League. So that's one I definitely respect.
Yeah, so that's kind of all we have for these awards. Let us know down below who you guys have winning these awards. Who do you agree with? Who do you disagree with? Throw some hate, throw some love. We'll respond to all of you down below. And make sure you check out our records and playoff predictions, which came out the video before this just yesterday. And make sure you guys tomorrow, if you're watching this when it comes out, are enjoying baseball. It's going to be a fun season. A lot of talent spread around the league. A lot of guys that can win awards. So it's going to be fun to watch. But for now, we've been Double Play. Excited to watch some baseball. We'll see you guys next time.